Hey, welcome back to another Black City Coffee vlog. In this video, we're answering another question. Alright, keep them coming with the really good questions from Balake. Alright, another question for you, although I feel I may have covered it. I'm typically getting around 14% weight loss. Is this good or bad? Is this more of a light - medium type of profile? And what are some tips on how to alter weight loss? Okay, this is something I'm also going through and like really trying to understand how much weight do I put on using weight loss as a metric of success in my roasts. And the reason why I'm not so like for sure, even after all this time, is because I've been roasting that Mr. Pablo and the Rasuna, which are probably the freshest coffees I've ever roasted. And I talked about this, I think, in a previous video earlier this week, talking about I'm roasting these really light. I'm developing them really, really light. I'm dropping them really light, almost like just maybe like right under a minute after first crack. And typically that's a very light profile. However, the weight loss is more along 13%, 13.5, right? And to me, I was thinking, that looks, as if I'm just looking at the number, that was typically falling into like a medium profile coffee, maybe like a light medium, right? And I don't know. I was just like, okay. And I had the same question as you. Is this good or bad? Because every other box that I'm checking off at the roaster is telling me this is a light roast, right? So I've got the data, I've got the curve, I've got the DTR, I've got the visual, I've got the smell too, right? And so I'm looking at the bean and I'm like, but the weight loss is a little bit, just a number that I'm not used to. So right away, just because more boxes are checked telling me that this is a light roast, or what I would classify as a light roast, right? Like you can define light as a roaster. You can really define those parameters for yourself. And I think a lot of roasters do that. For example, Onyx coffee versus Starbucks coffee. Maybe one of the more darker roasters versus one of the most lighter roasters. So I classify a light roast, and if you've drank my coffee before, like you would see that my light roast still will have some body. They have a lot of acidity up front, but they still have a lot of body because that's what I prefer. But I still want to taste nuance. Onyx, on the other hand, is going to have a really, really light roast, almost like cinnamon. They call it cinnamon, which is like a couple shades before what I would call light. And it's kind of really subjective, but the big difference there is the body in the coffee. The body in the coffee of, say, an Onyx coffee is super thin, right? Tea-like. I don't like tea-like bodies, so I really try to avoid that, right? So really, you can define what light means for you. But 13 or 14%, or you said you were getting what? 14%, right? I would definitely classify that as a medium. I would call it a light medium. Is it good or bad? It's not good or bad. It's good or bad, I guess, based upon your standards. So if you meant to roast something light and you typically get maybe, 12, 13% weight loss, that's what you typically get. And in the cup, that backs up those numbers and it still tastes like a light. It's still giving you all of the flavor characteristics of a light profile, then that's good, right? So, but if you're having a roast where you intended to go lighter than that, but you didn't, then maybe we call that a whoopsie, right? So, but you would have to cup it and make sure. You would have to go cup it and deem for yourself, was this a good or bad roast based on my own standards and what I produce? Because I don't know the coffee you're using. I don't know how old your coffee is. I don't know your standards for light, medium, and dark. Like it's all quite personal. So I don't think it's bad. So it all depends on the standards that you set for yourself, and I know you understand that. But for everybody else who may be catching me for the first time, and maybe don't know how I talk about coffee and how I roast coffee and how I have the discussion with you guys, is like, you have to create your own standard, right? So if your standard is based on somebody else who says that 14% is bad for whatever reason, then it's bad. Right? So it really depends the standard that you want to set. Okay, I beat that horse to death. So what was your other question? What are some tips on how to alter weight loss? Okay, this is a really good question. So this is more technical stuff. So say you roast it, you got a weight loss of 14%, and you go, whoops, I think I'm supposed to, I feel in my gut, and I feel that based upon my experience, it should be more like 12.5% weight loss, right? Say you're going for a true to form light roast or something like that for this coffee in particular. What you could do to fix that is, what I would first look at is the finishing time. So for example, right, we have the roast profile broken up into 3 phases. You have the first phase, the second phase, and the third phase. So how long was that third phase? If I use and pull up RoastPath, that way I have something visual to kind of like guide what I'm talking about. But Mr. Pablo finishes, I don't have a lot of leeway before it goes into a medium profile coffee. So I need to cut off that time in the third phase fairly quickly, like I said, under a minute. And that gives me kind of like the heebie-jeebies if I haven't done that a lot. Like if I'm not comfortable doing that, which is what I explained with this coffee. However, that's what needs to happen for this coffee to accentuate and actually exhibit those crazy wine flavors and stuff like that, because that's what I got in my sample roast. So that's what I would change first. Keep everything the same. Look at the last phase. See how long you developed this coffee. Maybe it was minute 30, something like that, and that's what gave you the little bit more weight loss, because you're basically losing more cell structure in the coffee itself because it's getting roasted. So in order to keep more of that cell structure in the bean, you need to stop cooking it. It's a thing of it in a more primal way. You need to stop cooking it quicker. And another thing you want to remember, after you drop the coffee, if you have a hot top, you hit the button drop or whatever it is. For me, I open the door and the coffee drops. The coffee is still hot. It's still roasting, actually. So you kind of have to be a little preemptive, like with this one, that it says it dropped at 9% DTR in the last phase. Actually, I'm opening that handle maybe a good 2 degrees or 2 percentages. Is it degrees or percents? I don't know. But I'm dropping it typically at, say, on the screen it says 7%. It lands at like 9%. Okay, so to think, I've talked about this before, but I don't think I talk about it often enough, is kind of like predicting where the coffee's going to land. Because it's still roasting, it's got to cool down. And if your cooling tray is not in like super tip-top shape where it can cool it down hella fast, it's going to keep roasting. So you really don't have an accurate portrayal of where the coffee is actually landing in the third phase. So depending on your situation, on how fast the coffee cools, it's still roasting. So even while I see in the screen it's telling me this number, and even 9%, we don't know that that's truly accurate, right? We can't bean probe the bean directly. You can't get inside that bean. So it's really probably a greater number than what it actually is. Or maybe reverse that. I'm not sure. And like I said, like roasting is not a perfect science. It's an art. So that's why you got to use all of your other senses beyond this technical data and information that we're seeing on the screen or on the panel or whatever it is. And we have to use our senses and go, okay, I recognize with all of my senses that this is a light roast. I'm going to do all the things, all the bells and whistles. We're going to write down the weight loss. We're going to write down any weird things that are going on and take studious and copious notes if we need to. That way, if we look back, we have some good data to like discern. But at the end of the day, it's what we're seeing. We're roasting with our senses and we're cupping it to see if it's actually good or bad. All right. Okay. Well, that's it. I hope that helps. Good question. And I hope you figure out if it is good or bad and let me know. Hit me back in the DMs. Balake. Okay. See you in the next one. Bye.